What if the story of African spirituality you've heard is only a fragment of a much greater truth? For centuries, people have been taught to believe that Africa only discovered the sacred after the arrival of foreign religions. But hidden beneath the silence of history lies an entire spiritual system that shaped justice, morality, and identity long before the first missionaries stepped onto Igbo soil. This system was not just about worship. It was about order, balance, and the connection between human beings and the universe. What was the system of life, justice, and divinity that guided the Igbo people before modern religion? How did a society without written scriptures create laws that kept communities united, sacred practices that sustained balance, and philosophies that still echo in the lives of millions today? To understand that, we must step into Odinani, the sacred spiritual framework of the Igbo people, a system as old as the land itself. Odinani, sometimes translated as the law of the land or that which is fixed, was not just religion in the narrow sense we often imagine today. It was a worldview, a complete philosophy of existence. To the Igbo, the spiritual and the physical were never separate. The two worlds were interwoven, and every action in the human realm had meaning in the spiritual realm. Through this system, the Igbo explained creation, destiny, morality, and justice. They understood their place in the universe not by borrowed beliefs, but by principles deeply rooted in their soil, their ancestors, and their gods. Yet Odinani was never static. It was alive, passed down through rituals, proverbs, stories, and community traditions. It was both personal and communal, guiding individuals through their chi, their personal destiny, while at the same time binding entire villages through shared reverence for the earth goddess Allah and the sacred codes of morality she represented. This was a spirituality that thrived without cathedrals or holy books because its temple was the world itself, its scripture written in the cycles of nature and in the lives of the ancestors. In this exploration, we will uncover the cosmology of Odinani, the supreme god known as Chukwu, and the pantheon of deities who expressed divine order. We will journey through the world of spirits and ancestors, where the living maintained constant dialogue with the unseen. We will see how justice was upheld not by human courts alone, but by divine balance, and how rituals, festivals, and daily practices kept harmony alive. This is not just the story of a belief system, but the story of a people who understood that to live was to exist in sacred connection with everything. At the very heart of Igbo spirituality lies the term Odinani. While often translated as the laws of the land or that which is fixed, the meaning carries a depth that cannot be captured in simple English. It was not merely a set of social rules. It was the recognition that life operated under sacred principles established before humans ever walked the earth. Odinani defined existence itself, how nature moved, how spirits interacted, and how human beings found their rightful place in the universe. For the Igbo, to live outside of Odinani was to live outside of order because it was seen as the eternal framework holding together both the visible and invisible worlds. At the center of this cosmology stood Chukwu, the supreme being. Chukwu was considered both transcendent and immanent, beyond human comprehension yet present in the workings of everyday life. Unlike gods in some traditions, Chukwu was not thought of in anthropomorphic form. Instead, Chukwu was the source of all energy, creation, and being. The name itself, Chukwu, Chi meaning personal god or essence, and Ukwu meaning great, captures the belief in a supreme essence that contains all destinies and powers. All deities, spirits, and forces flowed from Chukwu, yet the Igbo understood that the supreme being was so vast and immense that direct communication with Chukwu was rare. Instead, interaction with the divine often occurred through lesser deities, ancestors, or one's personal chi. Yet Chukwu remained the foundation and final authority of all. The Igbo universe was not seen as fragmented, but as a delicate balance between the spiritual and physical. Every tree, river, and mountain was alive with unseen forces. The physical world of humans existed alongside the spiritual world of gods, ancestors, and spirits, and the two were constantly in dialogue. When crops grew, when children were born, when disasters struck, these were never interpreted as accidents. Instead, they were understood as reflections of balance or imbalance between the worlds. This cosmology instilled in the Igbo a profound sense of responsibility, for their choices carried weight not only in their villages but in the cosmic order itself. An essential part of this worldview was the concept of duality and balance. The earth itself, represented by Allah, the earth goddess, embodied not just the soil that gave life but also the moral compass of the people. Allah was both fertility and justice, both sustainer and judge. To offend the earth was to disturb moral and spiritual harmony, and this was considered one of the gravest wrongs. Balance was also expressed in gender, seasons, life and death, day and night. Nothing existed alone and nothing was permanent. Harmony was the key to survival. Through this duality, Odinani provided a spiritual explanation for the cycles of nature and the responsibilities of human beings within them. Perhaps one of the most intriguing concepts within this cosmology was Chi, the personal essence or destiny of every individual. The Igbo believed that before birth, each soul chose or was assigned a Chi, a spark of divine force that guided their life journey. This was not fate in the rigid sense, but rather a unique essence that shaped one's potential and possibilities. Success, failure, and destiny were tied to the relationship between a person and their Chi. To know oneself in Igbo spirituality meant to understand and align with one's Chi, for to work against it was to live in conflict with one's very being. This belief empowered individuals to see life as meaningful, with purpose written into their existence from the start. The power of Chi was also a source of deep reflection in Igbo thought. A person who achieved great success was often described as having a strong Chi, while someone who struggled might be said to have a weaker or less favorable Chi. But this was never viewed as a permanent cause. Through rituals, personal discipline, and alignment with Odinani, one could strengthen the bond with their Chi and walk in greater harmony with destiny. This idea provided resilience and hope, as it taught that one's future was never completely sealed, but could be influenced by conscious living and spiritual awareness. In the cosmology of Odinani, nothing was random. The laws of the land were more than customs. They were eternal truths binding humans, nature, and the divine in an unbroken circle. Chukwu reigned as the supreme source of all. Allah guarded morality and fertility. The physical and spiritual worlds danced together in balance. Each individual carried within them a divine spark, their Chi shaping their destiny. It was a worldview that explained not only the mysteries of the universe, but also the everyday actions of ordinary people, reminding them that life was sacred, structured, and deeply connected to forces greater than themselves. And for the Igbo, to live in harmony with this order was not only wisdom, it was survival, identity, and life itself. The spiritual world of the Igbo was richly populated, a layered universe where divine power expressed itself in many forms. At the highest level stood Chukwu, the supreme being, whose immensity transcended direct human interaction. But Odinani was not a system where the divine was distant. Chukwu expressed divine will through a pantheon of deities, each one responsible for different aspects of life, morality, and the natural order. These deities were not rivals to Chukwu, but channels through which the infinite greatness of the Supreme Being became accessible to human understanding. Foremost among these deities was Allah, the earth goddess. Allah was not only the giver of fertility and abundance, but also the guardian of morality and justice. She was the one who received the dead into her bosom, who blessed the soil with its ability to produce food, and who set the laws that regulated human behavior. To commit a crime against another person was also an offense against Allah because it disturbed the balance of both the land and the spirit. Through Allah, the Igbo saw the inseparable link between morality and the natural environment. A reminder that to harm the earth or to break sacred taboos was to invite both social and cosmic consequences. Another central figure in the Igbo pantheon was Amadioha, the god of justice and thunder. Known as the enforcer of truth, Amadioha was both feared and revered, for his role was to strike down dishonesty and wickedness. Thunderstorms were often interpreted as his presence, a dramatic reminder that lies and injustice could not escape divine retribution. While Allah embodied nurturing justice through the earth, Amadioha represented swift and visible justice from the skies. Together they balanced compassion with accountability, teaching that morality was not only about forgiveness, but also about consequences. Beyond these major deities, the Igbo pantheon included countless other spiritual forces tied to rivers, forests, and natural phenomena. Each river might have its spirit, each sacred grove its guardian. These spirits were neither abstract nor distant, they were part of everyday life. Farmers prayed to them for good harvests, hunters sought their favor for protection in the forest, and families made offerings to ensure harmony. In this way, spirituality was woven seamlessly into the daily rhythm of work, community, and survival. Equally central to Odinani was ancestor reverence known as Ndiche. The Igbo did not see death as an end, but as a transformation into another form of existence. Ancestors were the protectors of the living, intermediaries between the physical world and the divine. They were consulted in times of crisis, honored in family rituals, and remembered through offerings of kola nuts, food, or libations. The presence of ancestors was not symbolic, it was real. A family that neglected its ancestors risked losing spiritual protection, while those who honored them were believed to walk in guidance and blessing. Ancestors were moral exemplars too, constantly watching over the living and reminding them that their actions would echo into eternity. This deep reverence for deities and ancestors found expression in shrines and sacred groves, which served as physical spaces of connection. Every village had shrines dedicated to deities like Allah or Amadioha, where priests and diviners performed rituals on behalf of the community. These shrines were not just places of worship, but centers of justice, healing, and decision-making. Sacred groves, often untouched patches of forest, were believed to be dwelling places of powerful spirits. To cut down a tree in such a grove or to violate its sanctity was considered a grave offense, punishable by both the community and the unseen forces that inhabited it. These spaces embodied the idea that nature itself was divine, a living testimony to the bond between humans and the spirit world. The pantheon, the ancestors, and the countless spirits of Odinani reveal a cosmology where life was never solitary. Every human action was observed by divine eyes, every moral decision weighed against the laws of Allah, every injustice subject to the thunder of Amadioha, and every family blessed or judged by the spirits of their ancestors. Through this intricate system, the Igbo created a world where the sacred was not far away, but intimately close, present in the soil, the sky, the rivers, and in the memories of those who came before. To live in Odinani was to live surrounded, guided, and held accountable by a spiritual universe that was as alive as the people themselves. It meant understanding that every act carried weight, every ritual carried meaning, and every life was woven into the eternal dialogue between the living, the dead, and the divine. One of the most profound aspects of Odinani was its fusion of the sacred and the ethical. In Igbo thought, morality was never separate from spirituality, for both were governed by the same universal laws. Odinani was not simply a code of worship but a moral compass that defined right and wrong, justice and injustice, order and chaos. To the Igbo, justice was not an abstract principle invented by human beings. It was a divine reality written into the very structure of the world. Every community decision, every judgment, and every punishment was rooted in the belief that morality was cosmic, and to violate it was to disturb the balance of both society and the universe itself. At the center of this spiritual ethical system was divination, known as Afa. Afa was more than a method of seeking hidden knowledge. It was a tool for uncovering truth, resolving disputes, and restoring harmony when the balance was disturbed. When a crime was committed or when illness, famine, or misfortune struck, the people turned to diviners who used Afa to communicate with the unseen forces. Through carefully interpreted signs, the diviner revealed whether an individual had broken a taboo, whether ancestral displeasure was at play, or whether an offering was required to restore balance. In disputes, Afa acted almost like a spiritual court, ensuring that the voices of both the living and the dead were considered in the pursuit of justice. For the Igbo, ignoring the verdict of Afa was unthinkable, because it was not just the opinion of a human being, but the revelation of divine truth. Closely tied to justice was the sacred Ofo staff, one of the most powerful symbols in Igbo society. The Ofo was a staff made from a particular tree, consecrated through ritual, and passed down within lineages as a sign of authority and righteousness. To hold the Ofo was to stand in the delight of truth, for it represented the moral authority granted by both the ancestors and the divine. Elders and priests carried it when making judgments, and oaths were sworn upon it as a way to bind truth with spiritual consequence. A lie told in the presence of the Ofo was not just a dishonor. It was a dangerous act believed to invite divine punishment. In many communities, the Ofo was brought out during trials, disputes over land, or moments of reconciliation, serving as a reminder that justice was sacred and the truth could not be bent without consequence. The framework of morality in Odinani was further reinforced through Neso, Allah, the sacred taboos established under the authority of Allah, the earth goddess. These taboos governed both personal conduct and communal life, ranging from prohibitions against incest, theft, or murder to ecological laws that protected rivers, forests, and farmlands. To commit Enso-Allah was not just to offend another human being, but to pollute the land itself, disturbing the harmony that sustained life. Because Allah was both fertility and morality, violating her laws meant endangering both human society and the natural world. For example, spilling human blood on the soil without ritual cleansing was considered one of the gravest offenses, as it desecrated the earth and demanded immediate atonement. The consequences of breaking these spiritual and moral codes were severe, extending far beyond individual punishment. In Igbo belief, a violation could bring misfortune not only to the offender, but to the entire community. Crops might fail, sickness might spread, or natural disasters might occur if the gods and ancestors were offended. To restore balance, rituals of cleansing and atonement were often required, including sacrifices, confessions, or communal ceremonies to appease Allah and the spirits. In some cases, the offender might be exiled or required to undergo ritual purification before being reintegrated into society. What mattered most was not only punishing the guilty but re-establishing harmony between the human world and the unseen world. This integration of morality, justice, and spirituality created a system where ethics were not abstract but deeply lived. People acted justly not simply out of fear of social reprisal, but because they understood that every action echoed into the spiritual realm. A dishonest word could anger Amadioha, a crime could desecrate Allah, and neglecting ancestral respect could strip a family of protection. Morality in Odinani was the invisible thread that held the community, the land, and the cosmos together. In this world, to live a just life was to live in harmony with all existence, and to violate justice was to risk unraveling the delicate balance upon which life itself depended. It was a system that placed immense responsibility on the individual while reminding the community that true justice could only exist when it honored both the living and the divine. For the Igbo, spirituality was not confined to a distant temple or reserved for sacred days alone. It was lived daily, woven seamlessly into the rhythms of work, family, and community. Every act carried spiritual weight, and ordinary life was infused with rituals that honored both the deities and the ancestors. From sunrise to sunset, the Igbo recognized the presence of the unseen, ensuring that their connection to the divine was never broken. In this sense, Odinani was not a religion of separation, but one of integration, reminding the people that every moment was an opportunity to affirm harmony with the universe. One of the most common daily practices was the offering of libations, a ritual act that expressed gratitude and sought blessings. A man pouring palm wine upon the earth before drinking was not wasting drink, but acknowledging the ancestors and the deities, inviting them to partake before he did. This simple act symbolized the priority of the spiritual over the physical, a recognition that human beings owed their existence to forces greater than themselves. In times of illness or uncertainty, more elaborate offerings might be made, often involving small sacrifices of animals or food, believed to nourish the spirits and restore balance. Community life was also marked by larger rituals and festivals, which bound villages together in celebration and reverence. Among the most important was the New Yam Festival, or Iriji. This annual celebration was far more than a harvest feast. It was a sacred acknowledgement of Allah, the earth goddess, who had blessed the people with fertility and abundance. Before anyone tasted the new harvest, the yams were offered first to the gods and ancestors, affirming that nothing belonged solely to humans. The festival was filled with music, masquerades, and dancing. Yet beneath the joy lay a deep spiritual truth. Life was sustained only through divine generosity, and gratitude was the key to future abundance. Life cycle rituals also carried profound spiritual meaning under Odinani. At birth, a child was welcomed not only into the family but also into the spiritual world, with rituals performed to ensure alignment with the child's chi. Names were often chosen to reflect divine acknowledgement, ancestry, or destiny. Marriage was likewise considered more than a social contract. It was a sacred union blessed by both families and their ancestors, reinforced through rituals that sought harmony and fertility. Death, too, was not an end but a passage. The burial rites ensured that the deceased joined the ancestors peacefully, and improper burial was feared because it risked leaving a restless spirit trapped between worlds. In this way, every stage of life was understood as part of a spiritual journey, framed by rituals that connected the individual to community, ancestors, and deities. The role of masquerades, often performed during festivals or funerals, also reveals how spirituality infused daily practice. These masquerades were not mere entertainment. They were embodiments of spirits who returned to dance among the living. To witness a masquerade was to encounter the unseen, to be reminded that the ancestors and spirits were not distant memories but active presences in the community. Rituals of this kind reinforced the worldview that the visible and invisible worlds overlapped, shaping every experience of life. Even daily work and interactions carried spiritual dimensions. Farmers began their planting with prayers to Allah, hunters sought protection from forest spirits, and traders invoked blessings before journeys to distant markets. Social order too was maintained through ritual. When disputes arose, reconciliation was not complete until the appropriate sacrifices or libations were made, signaling that peace had been restored not only among humans, but also in the sight of the gods. In this way, spirituality served as a bridge between personal life, community order, and cosmic balance. In the rituals of Odinani, one can see the deep integration of spirituality into every layer of existence. From a man pouring libation at dawn, to families celebrating a marriage, to entire villages dancing at the New Yam Festival, the sacred was never absent. It was present in the soil, in the food, in the laughter of children, and even in the grief of death. To live as an Igbo under Odinani was to live in constant awareness that the world was alive with divine presence, and that only through ritual acknowledgement could harmony be sustained. It was a spirituality that did not remove people from life's struggles and joys, but sanctified them, making the everyday itself a sacred journey. Odinani reveals a world where spirituality, morality, and daily life were inseparable. It was not a religion in the narrow sense, but a complete philosophy of existence, guiding the Igbo in their understanding of creation, justice, community, and destiny. Through its cosmology, its deities, its reverence for ancestors, and its intricate system of rituals, Odinani offered a way of life that connected the physical and spiritual, the human and the divine, the living and the dead. It was a system that preserved balance, gave meaning to existence, and held society together in both justice and reverence for the unseen. Much of Odinani still survives today, though often in fragments, embedded within festivals, proverbs, traditional rituals, and the quiet practices of families who still pour libation to the ancestors. While foreign religions reshaped African spirituality, Odinani endures as a reminder that African people had a sacred system long before colonial encounters. Its wisdom continues to echo, reminding us of the need for balance, respect for nature, and the recognition of ancestral memory in shaping identity. As we reflect on Odinani, we are called not only to look backward, but also forward to see how indigenous knowledge can inspire us today. If this journey into Igbo spirituality has fascinated you, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this video so that more people can rediscover the sacred wisdom that still beats within the heart of Africa.